The news broke on a quiet Tuesday morning and spread like wildfire. In the stillness of dawn, as the first rays of sunlight crept over the rooftops, villagers went about their daily routines, unaware that their world was about to change. The air was thick with anticipation as word traveled from house to house, carried by whispers and the rustle of freshly printed newspapers. Vatican Choir Director finds heaven's voice in a Filipino village. The headline seemed almost surreal, as if plucked from a work of fiction. Yet, there it was, printed in bold letters for all to see. The headline was bold, almost unbelievable. It challenged everything people thought they knew about sacred music and the traditions of the church. For centuries, sacred music's pinnacle was believed to reside within St. Peter's Basilica. The Vatican was the undisputed heart of spiritual song, its choirs echoing through marble halls and inspiring awe in all who listened. The Sistine Chapel Choir was considered the earthly echo of the divine. Their harmonies were legendary, their discipline unmatched, their voices said to bridge the gap between heaven and earth. The idea that something more profound could be found elsewhere was revolutionary. It was as if the world's musical compass had suddenly shifted, pointing not to Rome, but to a small, unassuming village thousands of miles away. The story centered on Father Antonio Morelli, the Vatican's esteemed choir director. Known for his unwavering commitment to tradition, he was a figure of authority and respect within the church. His reputation was built on discipline and perfection. For decades he had shaped voices into instruments of worship, demanding nothing less than excellence from his singers. The suggestion that he found something superior in a remote Filipino village sent shockwaves through the Catholic world. Parishioners and priests alike struggled to comprehend how a place so far removed from the grandeur of Rome could hold such a secret. What could he have heard that changed his worldview? What melody, what harmony could move a man so deeply rooted in tradition to reconsider everything he believed about sacred music? Initial reports were sparse, painting a picture of a man transformed. Witnesses described Father Morelli as contemplative, even humbled, after his encounter with the village choir. The world's attention turned to a small town in the Philippines, suddenly thrust into the spotlight. Journalists, musicians, and pilgrims flocked to the village, eager to witness the miracle for themselves and to understand what had drawn the Vatican's master of music so far from home. This was more than a story about music. It was about the heart of worship. It was about the power of faith expressed through song, and the way a humble community could touch the soul of even the most seasoned maestro. The real story was in the sounds he heard, the people he met, and the transformation that followed. In the end, it was not just about finding a new voice for the Vatican, but about rediscovering the true spirit of worship, one that transcends borders, traditions, and expectations, echoing from the heart of a Filipino village to the very halls of the Holy See. Father Antonio Morelli arrived in the Philippines on a sweltering September afternoon. Used to the order of Vatican life, he came to teach Gregorian chant and polyphony to local choirs. He expected gratitude and perhaps some amateurism. His destination, San Rafael, a small town far from Manila. The journey was jarring, chaotic jeepneys, blaring music, and vibrant street life. The church was a simple structure, not a grand cathedral. The people greeted him warmly, but the choir singing was untrained and imprecise. He saw his task as immense, to impose order on musical chaos. He prepared to teach, believing beauty required discipline. Yet he could not have known he was about to receive the most profound lesson of his life. The lesson would come not from textbooks, but from the heart of the community. Frustration marked his first days as he tried to instill Roman discipline. The choir listened politely, but their voices remained stubbornly authentic. Outside the church, he discovered music everywhere. Children singing in tricycles, a mother humming to her baby, families harmonizing at dinner. Music was not an event, but a constant companion. He heard a father and daughter practicing a duet. A mournful kundiman played on guitar. The music of San Rafael was not meant for stone walls, but for open windows and daily life. He realized he'd been listening for technical perfection, missing the point. The soundtrack of their existence was a direct line from their hearts. His frustration began to shift into a deep, unsettling curiosity. The choir's rehearsal space was the town's covered basketball court. Each evening it transformed into a sanctuary of sound. The acoustics were terrible, the setting humble. Yet the choir was a cross-section of the town. Farmers, students, mothers, elders. Laughter and stories filled the air before singing began. Father Morelli heard imperfections, but also a collective soul, Their music was not a performance, but a shared prayer. The basketball court became a metaphor for their faith, grounded, communal, real. He realized his mission to teach was misguided. He was the one being schooled. This dusty court was his classroom. The lesson, the raw power of sincere collective worship. I attended a funeral for a village elder. The community sang hymns as they walked, voices choked with grief but full of power. The music was the grief itself, raw, immediate, and personal. A granddaughter's cracked voice was heartbreakingly beautiful. Later, at a joyful anniversary dinner, the music was spontaneous, messy, and full of laughter. In San Rafael, music was the language of the soul, expressing the full spectrum of life. It was not reserved for special occasions or holy spaces. It connected life and death, grief and celebration. I realized the most profound worship was the honest sound of a life being lived. Perfection was not the goal, sincerity was. Father Morelli's beliefs were shaken. He'd built his life on the pursuit of perfect liturgical music. In San Rafael, the voices were full of cracks, emotion, exhaustion, untrained chords. Yet these cracks let the light in. The authenticity shone through the floors. Listening to his own choirs recording from Rome, he heard beauty, but also sterility. He realized he'd focused on sound, not souls. The revelation was terrifying, a betrayal of his life's work. He thought of kintsugi, the art of mending with gold. Perhaps the most sacred music was not flawless, but offered up in brokenness and faith. The cracks were not failures, but the places where grace entered. He began to see beauty in imperfection. The turning point in Father Morelli's journey came quietly, almost unexpectedly, during what seemed like an ordinary Sunday Mass in a small Filipino town. The church was packed to the brim, every pew filled with families and elders, the air thick with humidity and anticipation. People fanned themselves with woven palm leaves, beads of sweat glistening on their foreheads, yet no one seemed to mind the heat. The warm golden light filtered through the stained glass, casting gentle colors on the faces of the faithful. The choir began to sing the Kyrie, their voices rising in a simple, heartfelt arrangement. There were no grand instruments, no polished harmonies, just the honest sound of a community lifting their voices together. Father Morelli closed his eyes, not as a critic searching for flaws, but as a humble worshipper seeking connection. He let the music wash over him, surrendering to the moment. What he heard was not the imperfections of amateur singers, but the collective plea of a community bound by faith and hope. Each voice, whether strong or trembling, added to the chorus of longing and gratitude. Their hopes, fears, and devotions wove together in a tapestry of faith, each prayer and song thread contributing to something greater than themselves. The harmony he heard was spiritual, not just musical, a unity that transcended technical skill and reached into the soul. Tears welled in his eyes, not from sadness but from a sudden, overwhelming revelation. He realized that the beauty of sacred music lay not in flawless execution, but in the honesty and vulnerability of those who sang. The goal of sacred music, he understood, was not perfection, but the creation of an honest sound, a sound that reflected the true hearts of the people. In that moment, he saw that the congregation was not just singing to God, but singing with God, their voices joining in a sacred conversation. In that humble, sunlit church, surrounded by sincerity and devotion, Father Morelli felt closer to heaven than he ever had in any grand cathedral. The sound that moved him so deeply came not only from the people around him, but from within his own heart, a resonance of shared faith and longing. He understood at last that heaven was not reached through perfection, but through sincerity, humility, and the courage to sing one's truth. Father Morelli had come to this place to teach, but in the end, he was brought to his knees in awe, forever changed by the simple, honest faith of a humble congregation. On his final day in the village, as the sun dipped below the horizon and dusk settled over the fields, the entire community gathered for a heartfelt farewell on the familiar basketball court. The air was thick with anticipation, the court illuminated by strings of lights and the gentle glow of lanterns, casting long shadows across the faces of those assembled. The villagers, along with the choir members, expected a stern critique or perhaps a final lesson from Father Morelli, as was his custom. But as he stepped forward, his demeanor was different, softer, more vulnerable. His words, when they came, caught everyone by surprise. "I came here to teach you," he began, his voice trembling with emotion, echoing gently through the night air. The microphone seemed almost unnecessary, for every ear was tuned to his confession. I believed I possessed superior knowledge, that my years of training and experience made me your guide. But I was wrong, so very wrong. It is I who have been taught. Through your kindness, your patience, and your music, you have changed me. You have made me better, not just as a musician, but as a person. This was not a critique, nor a farewell speech filled with advice. It was a confession, a humble admission of transformation. For years, I chased technical perfection, he continued, his eyes distant as he recalled his past, believing that flawless sound was the highest goal. In my pursuit, I silenced the souls behind the music, demanding precision over passion. But here, among you, I witnessed something different. You let your soul sing, with joy, with sorrow, with struggle, and with unwavering faith. Your music is alive, filled with the stories of your lives and the spirit of your community. Your voices are not perfect by the standards I once held, and yet, for that very reason, they are the most perfect instruments of praise I have ever heard. Each note carries your heart, your laughter, your tears. In Rome, I heard the music of angels. Beautiful, yes, but distant, almost untouchable. The sound was flawless, but the spirit felt far away, separated by marble and gold. Here in this humble place, I have heard the voice of God more clearly than ever before. It is in your singing, in your unity, in the way you lift each other up. His admission hung in the air, powerful and sincere, touching every soul present. The silence that followed was not empty but full, brimming with understanding, gratitude, and a sense of shared transformation. In that moment, Father Morelli was no longer a distant maestro, but a humble priest, standing shoulder to shoulder with the people who had changed his heart. He had come seeking to lead, but found himself led. The community sat in silence, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns, each one reflecting understanding, pride, and deep emotion. The lesson was complete, not just for the choir, but for Father Morelli, and for everyone who listened that night. Father Morelli returned to Rome a changed man. The Vatican's grandeur now seemed to lack something. The flawless choir performances sounded different. He encouraged his choristers to feel the music, to connect it to their faith. His story became a message. Sacred beauty is not monolithic. It can be found in a grand basilica or a dusty basketball court. True worship is a matter of the heart, not technique. The sound of San Rafael became his internal tuning fork. He championed cultural diversity in church music. His colleagues were skeptical, but his sincerity was undeniable. He had become a student of faith. Heaven's echo, he taught, is heard in the sincere, imperfect voice of a soul laid bare. His journey changed not just his music, but his understanding of God.